Welcome to Bookish and Beyond, where nonfiction comes to life. In each episode, we break down the world's most impactful books, from self-help to biographies. We dive into key takeaways, author insights, and modern parallels. Want more? Subscribers get exclusive access to our book summary, study guide, and timeline PDF, everything you need to go deeper. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Let's explore the books that change the way we think. This is Bookish and Beyond.
All right, so are you ready to explore the human body and the universe and creation itself? Because, wow, the source material you sent is amazing. We're going to be diving into Men in the Universe.
Oh, yeah.
By the 14th century scholar Ibn Qayyim.
Okay.
He's tackling these huge questions from an Islamic perspective, and I think you're going to find what he says is surprisingly insightful even today.
I agree.
Yeah.
Ibn Qayyim was so devoted to learning.
Oh, yeah.
His kids actually had to sell off big chunks of his library.
Wow.
After he died, he had a massive library. But what's so interesting about Men in the Universe is that he doesn't just list facts.
Right.
He combines philosophy and a sense of awe about nature, and that's what makes it so interesting to read even now.
You know, reading through his work, I was really struck by how he starts the book. He's talking about man being created from clay and despised fluid, which I'm assuming is his way of saying sperm.
Right.
You know, not exactly the most beautiful image.
Yeah.
But it makes you think about where we came from.
Right.
Our humble beginnings.
It does, and it's not just like a metaphor or something.
Right.
What's fascinating is that even back then, he had a pretty detailed understanding of fertilization.
Yeah.
He describes the sperm's journey and all the different stages of development from a transformed clot to a full human. All these ideas that science wouldn't figure out for centuries.
It really blows your mind when you think about it. Like, we all started from this tiny little speck.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what did people in the 14th century even think when they saw a sperm cell? Did they even have anything to be able to see something that small?
That's a great question. Microscopes like we use today didn't exist back then.
Right.
But there is some evidence that scholars were playing around with lenses and magnifying glasses.
Okay.
So they might have had some idea about the microscopic world,
Okay.
even if they didn't completely understand.
So they might have had some basic tools. But what I find more interesting is how Ibn Qayyim connects these biological things to his understanding of creation.
Yeah.
What was he trying to say by talking about the, almost insignificant origins of human life?
I think he wanted people to see the miracle of life, even in the simplest forms.
Okay.
It's like he's saying, look, even from this despised fluid, you get something as complex and amazing as a person. That's a powerful statement about the potential in all of creation.
That makes a lot of sense. And he doesn't stop at the beginning of life.
Right.
He goes on to describe the human body in such detail, from the bones and ligaments to the brain and the heart.
Yeah.
It's like he was fascinated by all these systems that work together to keep us alive.
Absolutely. And he doesn't just list body parts.
Right.
He describes how they work, and he seems to really understand cause and effect. For example, he talks about how the nose is wider at the bottom so that waste can come out.
Oh.
That shows a really good understanding of the body's design.
It's wild to me that he knew so much about anatomy without all the tools we have today.
Right?
He even makes these really smart comparisons. Like, he says that every time your heart beats, it's like lifting a 2-foot machine.
Wow.
And we know today that the heart beats over 100,000 times a day and pumps like 2,000 gallons of blood.
Yeah.
That's a lot of lifting.
It really makes you think about all the hard work your heart is doing without you even knowing.
Totally. And even back then, Ibn Qayyim understood that the brain needed a constant supply of what he called sweetness. Today we know that means glucose, the main source of energy for our brains. It makes you wonder, what did people eat back then to keep their brains working? Did they even understand how food affects your brain? I love how you're connecting these ancient ideas to modern science.
Yeah.
It's making me rethink everything I thought I knew about history and science.
It reminds us that we're always building on what people learned before us.
Yeah.
We might have fancy tools today, but people have always wanted to understand the world around them.
That's so true. And speaking of things that come in pairs,
Okay.
I've always wondered, why do we have 2 eyes and 2 ears and 2 nostrils, but only 1 nose? Like, is there some deeper meaning to that?
Ibn Qayyim actually talks about this.
Oh, wow.
He says that having 2 of these organs is not random.
Yeah.
It's all about how they work and balance.
Yeah.
Imagine having just one ear. It would be really hard to figure out where a sound was coming from.
True.
Or think about talking with only half your tongue.
Yeah.
It'd be really tough.
You're blowing my mind. It makes you appreciate how everything is designed and how much we take for granted.
Yeah.
But if everything comes in pairs for function and balance, does that apply to humans too?
That's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
Ibn Qayyim compares humans and animals. He points out that animals in the same species all look almost the same,
Right.
but humans are all different.
Yeah.
He talks about two kinds of looking, which we can talk about later.
Okay.
But it has to do with how humans see the world and recognize each other.
Okay, I'm hooked now.
Yeah.
We've gone from sperm cells to noses to how we see each other. What's next in Men in the Universe?
Well, we've looked at the human body now. Let's look at another amazing part of creation, the moon.
Okay.
Ibn Qayyim had some fascinating things to say about it, some of them surprisingly accurate.
All right, ready to blast off.
Okay, when you said blast off, it made me think of what Ibn Qayyim wrote about the creation of the heavens. He quotes this verse from the Quran that says, "Then he turned to the heaven when it was smoke." And it really shows this idea that even space had a beginning,
Yeah.
a starting point.
Wow, that image of the heavens starting as smoke. It's so different from how we describe space today.
It is. But what's really interesting is how he connects that image to this idea of God's power and design.
Okay.
He says that even though the sky, this roof above us, came from smoke, it's still incredibly strong and holds together.
Right.
It's like he's saying that even something as messy as smoke can be transformed into something incredibly stable and beautiful.
That's a beautiful way to think about it. It makes you think about those early astronomers looking up at the night sky, trying to figure out how the stars and planets move. What tools did they even have back then?
Well, they didn't have telescopes or satellites,
Right.
but they had something super powerful: observation and deduction. They carefully watched how celestial bodies moved, noticing patterns and cycles. And just by observing, they figured out some pretty accurate stuff about Earth's place in the universe.
Talking about Earth.
Yeah.
Ibn Qayyim describes our planet's spot in the solar system pretty accurately.
Yeah.
He even mentions that no star or planet is made without a reason or purpose, which is a pretty big idea.
It is. He talks about how the Earth is tilted and how that creates the 4 seasons, this cycle that affects so much of life on our planet. He even touches upon the moon and its phases and how it affects the tides.
It's mind-blowing that they knew so much about these things without all the technology we have today.
Yeah.
It kind of makes you think those ancient astrologers were like geniuses.
Whoa, let's not get ahead of ourselves. While it's impressive what they figured out, there's a big difference between astrology and astronomy.
Oh, right.
Astrology tries to connect things happening in space to human lives,
Okay.
while astronomy is the study of space itself.
Got it. But it is interesting how Ibn al-Qayyim's descriptions of the moon affecting tides and Earth's tilt creating seasons seem to line up with some of the basic ideas in astrology.
There are definitely some overlaps because they were both looking at the same sky.
Right.
But just because two things seem connected doesn't mean one causes the other.
Right. But I'm still curious about what Ibn al-Qayyim had to say about the moon.
Yeah.
He seems to talk about it a lot in the book.
He does. He describes the moon as something that's constantly chasing but never catches what it's after.
Oh, wow.
It almost sounds like poetry.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Was he just being poetic, or was there something more to that description?
I think it's both. It's a poetic way to describe how the moon orbits the Earth. Remember, he didn't have the scientific language we have today to talk about gravity and orbits. So he had to use images and metaphors to explain these ideas.
So he's mixing science and art. I love that. It reminds me of how he talks about the two kinds of looking.
Exactly. That's a really important part of his work.
Yeah.
He says that we can look at the world with our eyes,
Right.
but there's also another way to look with our mind's eye.
Okay.
This means seeing beyond just what's on the surface and understanding the deeper meaning and purpose behind creation.
Okay. I think I'm starting to see the connection here. So when he describes the moon as always chasing something, he's not just talking about its orbit.
Right.
He's saying something about maybe the search for knowledge or even spiritual understanding.
I think you're getting it.
Yeah.
He uses this analogy of someone traveling through a huge palace, amazed by all the little details and hidden rooms. But he says the real journey is understanding the architect's vision,
Okay.
the grand plan behind every part of the palace.
I'm getting chills. It's like he's saying that the universe itself is a message. Yeah. An invitation to think about something bigger than ourselves.
Right.
But if we're supposed to be thinking about that grand plan, how can we even start to grasp something so big and complicated?
He gives us some clues. He talks about how the stars and constellations follow a set path, a system created by something greater. He says that by looking at these patterns in space, we can learn about what's happening here on Earth.
That almost sounds like astrology again.
Uh-huh.
But I guess if you believe that there's an order to the universe, then everything would be connected, right?
That's exactly his point. He saw the universe as a reflection of God's wisdom and power.
Okay.
And he believed that by learning about creation, we could understand more about God.
So it's not just about seeing what's there.
Right.
It's about understanding the reason behind it.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see why you said his work is still relevant today.
Yeah, he encourages us to look at the world with wonder and curiosity, to ask questions and search for deeper meaning in everything.
Okay, so we've explored the moon, the stars, and this idea of two kinds of looking.
Yeah.
What else does Ibn Qayyim have for us in Men in the Universe?
Well, we've explored space.
Yeah.
Let's come back to Earth.
Yep.
Specifically to the human body.
Right.
Ibn Qayyim talks a lot about how amazing the human body is.
Okay.
Not just how it works, but the intelligence behind that design.
All right, I'm ready to zoom back in.
Yeah.
So we've been on this incredible journey with Ibn Qayyim.
Yeah.
Exploring the universe, how our bodies work.
It's been amazing.
I think what blows me away about his writing is that he doesn't just describe things.
Right.
He's always trying to find the deeper meaning, like the why behind creation.
Absolutely. He really believed that everything in creation, even the stuff that seems bad or unpleasant, serves a purpose, has a function in this bigger harmonious design.
Okay, I have to admit, that's hard for me to sometimes understand.
Yeah.
Like, how can there be a purpose for pain and suffering?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to kids that just feels wrong.
I get that. It's a natural reaction. But Ibn Qayyim has some interesting thoughts on this.
Okay.
For example, he observed that when babies cry, it actually helps to make their lungs stronger and open up their airways.
So something that seems negative, like a baby crying, could actually be good for their development.
That's what he's saying. He also says that the pain we go through as kids kind of prepares us for the tough stuff we'll face as adults, like a training ground for resilience and empathy.
Wow. I never looked at it like that.
Yeah.
It's like he's saying that without experiencing the bad, we wouldn't fully appreciate the good.
Right.
Or even understand what it means to be human.
Exactly. He uses this analogy of a world with only pleasure and ease.
Okay.
He says in that kind of world, we'd never develop strength, compassion, or even real joy. It's the contrast, the light and shadow that gives our lives depth and meaning.
That's deep. But if everything has a purpose, what about things like natural disasters or pandemics?
Yeah.
They cause so much suffering, it's hard to see anything good coming from them.
That's a tough one, and Ibn Qayyim admits these things are hard to understand.
Right.
But he suggests that they remind us that we're not invincible, that we depend on something bigger than ourselves. He says they can make us more humble and bring us together to support each other.
So even these horrible events can maybe lead to good things.
Right.
Like more compassion and stronger communities.
That's his view. He saw the world as a constant learning experience, a place where we're always growing and changing, even through tough times. He believed that by studying the world, both the beauty and the challenges, we could find hidden wisdom and get closer to God.
You know what's funny? I thought we'd be talking about anatomy in space.
Yeah.
And we did.
We did.
But it's become so much more than that.
I agree.
It's like Ibn Qayyim has given us a whole new way to understand the world and our place in it.
I think that's a great way to put it. He challenges us to not just see what's there, but to understand why it's there, to be curious and to look for connections in everything and to find meaning even when things are hard.
Well, listeners, as we wrap up our deep dive into Men in the Universe, I have to say I'm feeling really inspired. Ibn Qayyim's ideas, even though they're from centuries ago, feel so relevant to us today. He reminds us that the world is full of amazing things, and it's up to us to see them, to be open to learning from everything around us. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.